Hello and welcome to Circle Passages and Higher Ground. We're at TC Media Studios in Olympia, and again, as always, great crew behind the scenes that makes this possible, and brave co-hosts. Want to
Thanks,
introduce you
Buck.
to Heather. Yes, welcome.
Welcome, yeah. Good to be here, and they are the nicest people here.
Amen.
Yeah, amen,
Yes.
yeah.
We wouldn't be doing this otherwise, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Just don't know how to set all this stuff up automatically, but
No, we're just with frog
Some
puppets
help.
and
Yeah, there
stuff.
you
Yeah,
go.
that's our level. Yeah.
that's about it. Yes. In fact, we probably should do a show with just the puppets talking, and
Probably,
yeah.
yeah. The story of Jumping Mouths.
there you go. Yes, another time perhaps. So you just came back from just an incredible experience and opportunity to share a drum workshop. Actually, you led and at Mount Shasta of such a wonderful venue, the second of the last in the Cascades, and then you got a chance to go to Waganupa or Lassen as well, the last one. Care to describe what the drum workshop was about?
Yeah, as I was telling you, I didn't bring the drum that I made this last time, and it was a white buffalo woman. There have been 4 white calves born, and the first ever at Yellowstone, which is really cool. And I'll weave that in because the symbolism of that drum is really alive and resonant, but something about the altitude change, drums are alive. And so it just wasn't sounding as good today, so I was like, you just stay here. So I brought 2 other drums that I can talk to and through, but beautiful second Mount Shasta drum making workshop, and the last one was 2 weekends with a vision quest in between. This one was 1 weekend, and it's like a rite of passage / vision quest / sacred craft project. And so I was joking, but I'm not. It's my favorite art project because there's so much meaning in it. We did it in circle. It has such sacred geometry woven into that, and we can talk about that. But it mirrors the process of creation, finding your skin, having it find you, sitting with your skin, you know, the scars that we all have, kind of shadow work, bringing it back to life. The weaving of the thread is so much like an umbilicus, you know, whether it's these have different hides, but this is a death and rebirth one that Lynn gave me, 2 friends we have had that have died. And it has some, just the idiosyncrasies of the, like a little bit of fur. The scars are really obvious on the hides. And then the sacred geometry that's different on all of these in the back in terms of squaring a circle and, you know, the symbolism therein.
That's pretty cool too, with brads, or I don't know what you would call those, the silver pieces.
Lynn gave this to me. So the ones that we've done with Lori and then subsequently Centralia Fern Hide, amazing place. I send everyone there. It's like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah.
Native owned, ecologically sourced, and environmentally sourced. They like use brain of bear and things like that. But yeah, so they say they try to avoid using these kind of tack system, but this person obviously in creating this drum was very strategic. I didn't make this drum. Was given to me. So, but then I painted it for Jude's memorial that we went to. So it has a kind of a phoenix death and rebirth, death moth image on it. So.
And this is great. So, I mean, it looks like wings, but what? How would you describe that?
Yeah, so I have always loved the symbolism of the winged serpent. It's on, if you look at the tree of knowledge and you look at the tree of life in the kind of Genesis, Abrahamic religions, which is kind of the underpinning of Western mythology, you have the serpent, and then you have the winged serpent going up the tree of life. And in Gematria, where they add up the numerical equivalent of the Hebrew letters, the serpent is the trickster and redeemer. And so that winged serpent, you know, Quetzalcoatl, Mexico City, where I'm going, we can weave that in. They chose the site because they saw a winged serpent, you know, an eagle eating a snake. And so there's a lot to that symbolism. And so I wanted to create an image again to remember Jude. It was at her Mad Hatter birthday party in memorial. And so the death moth and the symbolism, the Ouroboros, but with wings, of kind of the winged serpent image. And then it has a moon, I don't know if people can see, and a little bit like the diamond as a radiant image.
Sounds good. And right here, it kind of looks like a mountain, or, you know, a peak.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So there,
is that
it's
part of
the
the diamond?
diamond, but
Yeah.
it is like a mountain peak. So much of the imagery has a symmetry, has sacred geometry. The radiance, you know, drumming is vibration that resonates out. And so this was for Jude, but as an image, as we weave through death and life, it was an image that held both to me.
Absolutely. And that was about 2-3 years ago when we did
Yeah.
the winter workshop, and it was just before she passed, but that was kind of cool too, to watch her putting things together. I think she just came off chemo
Yeah.
and was able to be present to show.
Yeah.
But it was what she was working on was just amazing too. Again, it looked like it was the serpent.
She did a rainbow serpent, and I think that was like they call it cryptomnesia, when you remember unconscious things in your art. So I think unconsciously I was responding to the fact when she did the drum workshop with us, she created a rainbow serpent, which has its own mythology around it. Very much about transformation. Yeah, and Lynn, who gave me this drum, both of them were at the drum workshop. Both of them are deceased. But in that, you know, death is life, transformation. So.
Definitely. And I know we've talked about this before, but when you talk about death and life, just the skin. So not sure about this one, but we used buffalo or Tatanka. Probably this, if it's, although they have deer.
I think, yeah.
A
So
couple
this.
of other ones at Centralia fur.
Yeah, so the white buffalo drum appropriately was buffalo. I'm doing an elk.
Okay.
It's in my bathtub, so I was telling Beck that my husband's
it.
like, hey, when can I use the bathtub and get these? And so I have actually an elk and a deer hide in there soaking as we
Nice.
speak.
Yeah.
I almost brought them, but they'd be very drippy. But they're beautiful to see the difference of, you know, in different stages, what they look like. You soak them so they're more supple, so you can make them more malleable. We'll move frog, but
Be able to wrap those around the rim, yeah.
yeah. And then this, I know all different ways, but this is the one, kind of the
yeah.
classic structure, Centralia fir and hide, has the squaring of the circle. So it's kind of nice. It works with, you can work with the 4 elements and directions, 4 stages of your life in the shields work. And you can see the hide. You get to know the hide inside and out, like our skin,
So
inside
true.
and out.
Yes.
And this one, I don't know how well that'll translate, but has a metamorphosis, flower of life. It's actually kind of supposed to go like that. But
Wow.
so this, I think I made this in that drumming workshop that we did together.
So is this the womb, would you say?
Yeah, so this is this chrysalis of rebirth. And on the trip that I went to, had tons of baby waterfowl. So cute.
wow.
Coots, the little waterfowl. It had cute coots, little babies. But a bunch of damselflies, dragonflies, not butterflies, but because it was a lake with water, we literally, my friend and I, had them, you know, crawling out of their shell, like on us, on our backpack, in my power circle, and emerging. So that concept of death and rebirth, and really alchemizing and depotentiating the fear around death. Because again, Jude died, Lynn died, you know, I had cancer, and it's like one of those things where you don't know. The doctor told me, for better or for worse, he's like, well, if it turns up, it'll probably turn up somewhere differently. And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
You mean like all the other places that no one's checking? That's perfect, you know. But sitting with that, and Lori, who taught us the drum making, the ceremony when we were by the Evergreen Beach, and her mom was transitioning, and
Yes.
and there was an eagle in the tree next to us, and I saw a great horned owl after. And when the vision I had while that was happening was that the eagle that was a golden eagle that I thought of as life was the one who flew kind of to the other side. And even having those friends die, I can see further into the other side, maybe my own experience of processing death. But so my major teaching, what I think is powerful about this, is that the golden eagle that we think of as life and light is death, that we are in the shadow realm. And, you know, so we think that we're alive, and we are. This is a super meaningful place to be, Earth School.
Here we are.
Here we are. And at the same time, we are in the shadow cave, like Plato. You know, and the other side is more like light and life. Ours is more like death and shadow, and it is the life we're living. But it helps you reimagine death and life and the relationship between the two.
Definitely.
And I believe in reincarnations. That also creates that movement of, you know, return, that we return. So
Absolutely. And hopefully at some point we get a chance to finish with the incarnations, and who knows, you know, I've apparently become teachers or whatever it is to help those who are on the path.
yeah,
And the thing that I thought was pretty cool too about, and then with different kinds of animals and skins, you mentioned elk, deer, buffalo or Tatanka, but obviously the hides are, so they've died, you know, however they were sacrificed. But this part right here, I thought was really cool when it's putting this drum together is bringing this hide back to life again. That's what's amazing, and what you were just doing too with the sound. You know, there's so many aspects of it, and just great painting that you did, and definitely imagery. It's amazing. So it's back to life again.
back to life, yeah. And I actually talked a little bit more at Centralia Fur and Hide. I'd queried a little bit about how they source their material and how they prepare it, using all the different parts. So there's very much that ethic of using all of the animal. And they actually go all over to pick up the animals. So they're often either hunters or roadkill or all different things. So the beauty is that you are using the animal gets to come back to kind of sacred purpose in life in and through the drum making process, including the tree. And so all of that is this way of us getting to know ourselves, our own scars, our own wounds, our own skins, you know, as we sit with the skin. And then in stretching it, it's also this sacred geometry, but you're pulling in tension, a tension of opposites. And you're, you know, stretching, and there's everything is a meaningful metaphor. Not least of which, this part is so much like working with an umbilicus. When you go, and then you square the circle and you hold it. And I know we've talked about this before, but the drum, especially when you throw in chanting and dancing, it's literally the most powerful healing medicine there is. Like, way better than pharmaceuticals. And hopefully I won't be killed in my car for that. But it's ancient, it's ancestral, it's primordial, it's archetypal. And of all the statistics, it was like 6 weeks of a limited drum practice. And you have a 20% decrease in depression, 40% decrease in anxiety. But the most fascinating one was like 28 to 30% increase in your connection to the earth. And to me, that's the powerhouse, because then you can amplify your own healing, your healing with the earth. And that to me is trans-species. and transformative. So
Definitely. And could you turn it over again one more time? You mentioned wood, so the rim itself
is maple. This one
maple,
is
all
maple.
right.
Yeah. So they have cedar. You can do some different options. Yeah, so what I did with this one, particularly because it wasn't 2 weekends with a vision quest in between, which is like you're perfect. You get to spend a day painting your room, and this was more like, okay, everyone, let's go. But getting in touch with, what animal calls to you. So in the week or two before I went down to Centralia Fern Hide, some people, their lineage worked with deer, or their lineage worked with elk or buffalo. Those were the 3 that people were called to get. Horse, again, these are not animals killed for this purpose. Bear, every once in a while they get. Cow, buffalo, and honestly, the other thing is that a lot of culling of the herds goes on places like Yellowstone, where they relocate and then kill something like 1,000 to 3,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So then again, you're giving sacred purpose. Like this animal gets to live again in and through your drum creation and practice. And I think that in that way of using the whole animal, that is a beautiful gift, both ways.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, that's just incredible, isn't it? Yeah, the whole cycle. Wow.
Yeah, and as you pull these, every step has a meaningful metaphor, has symbolism. Each of the quadrants and the shields, that we've done talks on that, but even each one, the east and the air and the west and the dawn and the new day and the spring, all of that, and love of spirit. And then the south, love of body, with the fire and all that symbolizes. But just the love ofs, love of spirit, love of body, love of self, love of others and community. Like to me, those loves, if we can do that, each one's so powerful. Love of body, like I was just reading statistics, 78% of high school girls don't like their body, and nothing's gone wrong with their body yet, Buck. That's the irony. But anyway, just so powerful, each of those. How do we work on these relationships to ourselves, to others, to the earth, each direction of the drum as an element. So it's like an earth altar / sacred arts and craft project.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, obviously, it entails so many different aspects and facets of, just putting this together. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and the vision quests and rite of passage. So the way that we did it, even in this weekend, that was kind of a deep dive, so it was all day. But we had people prepare like it's a pilgrimage, do a medicine walk before, like a rite of passage.
Nice.
People had ancestral spirits and lineage healing and all different, all the things that you'd have on a rite of passage. And you also get to hold it in circle together as we create. So this is like my favorite project.
Isn't it, though? And this isn't something we do every day, is it? Or get a chance to do, even to get in touch with these different pieces of who we are. And then the collective part, the circle part, sharing, just an amazing process. Wow.
Yeah, and really to make sure people realize this, that it's something like Lori is a Sami, Sami lineage, and so they're Nordic people. And so when we went to the rededication of Squaxin Island Park from Priest Point Park, one of the speakers was saying, you all have drums in your lineage, in your ancestry, and so reclaiming that is really reclaiming our connection to the heartbeat of the earth and to the mother. And so sometimes people think it is a native drum shop that we get the supplies from, and that's perfect, and that we all have that in our own ancestral tradition.
If you go back far enough, right?
If you go back far enough, yeah.
And where we did our Vision Quest, 10,000 years of those tribes doing it at that particular place, that very same thing of a Vision Quest. So really trying to figure out, okay, what am I being called to do?
Yeah, and one of the beauties of the drum and the vision quest is like, who am I? And then so often your name, you'd receive a name, and that was what your calling was. So it's really like, who am I and why am I here? And making sure that you do it not just for coming of age or, like these big steps, but for me, it's like, the biggest thing is don't climb the wrong ladder, and it's so hard to do in our society because society says, climb this ladder.
True.
But the great fear almost is to climb to the top of the ladder and then see your ladder and be like, I climbed the wrong ladder. And so I think these things where we touch in with ourselves are to make sure, am I living my own truth, my own life, my own purpose? And we need to check in because the world is that disorienting.
Which sounds like just a wonderful way of, how about if we do this before you start climbing ladders, is kind of get in touch, get to know your skin, who am I, what's going on. And again, it happens that we do go up the wrong ladder or we start at the wrong ladder. And
we've all kind of done that to some extent. We've all at least, started up the wrong ladder. Yeah. But so, as you're saying, the traditional vision quest and rite of passage, drum, receiving of a name, etc., is coming of age. And that's the perfect time to be like, who am I, where am I going, what's my purpose, what's my calling, and then to revisit it, after that at different points, to just really make sure this is the way I want to live my life.
Now, we talked about so many times is there are many cultures that do this. They do it intentionally because it's been tradition, it's been ritual for forever for them.
Right.
And it would be nice if, and that's what I think Circle Passages is about, is reviving rites of passage, and as well as so many other things, but the rites of passage, to really sit with that and be much more conscious about it.
Yeah, and the physician heal thyself. One of the things that's come up with a couple of people is veterans healing, and you're a veteran, right, Buck? Yeah, but to make sure that people have access to these ancestral lineage healings, and especially the pharmaceuticals have their place, absolutely. I did chemo and radiation surgery along with a bunch of other stuff. So, and at the same time, some of the things like drums are really amazing for veterans. After 6 weeks of practice, 40% reduction in anxiety, 20% reduction in depression, about 30% connection to the earth. All of those things are healing in a way that is different than a pill or a pharmaceutical. And we need to really remember that we can heal ourselves in these different modalities. And not only heal ourselves, but heal the land and heal each other and heal in connection and heal our ancestral lineage and, things that I think we've forgotten.
Definitely, and I think kind of talking with the veterans anyway, a lot of times is it's traumatic stress. So that in itself, those two words and what that really involves. So without pharmaceuticals, like you said, they can be helpful, but we're just with the drumming, 40% reduction in anxiety. That's usually one of the biggest issues right there, as well as the depression. So 20% just from doing this right here, which is amazing.
And the big one, there was just some longitudinal kind of a synthesis of long-term studies and with pharmaceuticals. So the big takeaway was that they helped 10% with anxiety, depression, all different issues, but 30% was placebo. So part of this is the dance of, this is the power of rites of passage. Instead of victimization and being passive, it's taking an active role in your own heroic life journey. And that has a 40% swing, throwing out random statistics, but because it goes from what's the biggest thing is going from a passive victim state to an active state whether you want to term it rites of passage or hero's journey or heroine's journey or whatever it is, rites of passage, hold that, where you go out and you go on a quest. Who am I? I'm going to live my life with purpose. And that is the powerful move.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it was when I went through the cancer and, I had cancer, so that makes you super motivated to be like, okay, how do we do this healing thing, But it was a statistic that isn't static in that it affected, like doing an art journal had a huge swing. It can take many forms, drumming, but it was about doing it consistently and taking on your own healing, taking an active role in your own healing journey. And that, I think, is the powerful underlying move. Whether you do a rite of passage or art journaling or make a drum, it's like you get to do it.
Definitely, and you've just talked about really like baby steps, but steps to be able to, again, to be proactive rather than just waiting for things to happen or, swallow something and I'm going to be okay. Well, this is a whole different way of approaching this.
Yeah, and it helped. The statistics were beautiful because they helped with the efficacy of the treatment. Like some of it was cancer that I was looking at. As well as reducing some of the symptoms of the side effects. So it was like in all these different ways you had benefits. And alchemizing death. I just know someone, a client lost their mom and the whole family is grieving. Grieving from the old French is lay the burden down. It's a burden. So how do we do that? How do we, like if this is a death drum and we're processing how death is rebirth, what is that? How can we hold that differently? How can we reimagine and restory and kind of rewrite our own narratives around what is life, what is death? How do they interact?
So engaging in something like what you just did, the drum workshop, I mean, it encompasses so much of that, doesn't it? It's recognizing the death aspect, that's pretty obvious when somebody does pass, but it's the rebirth part that is just exciting. It's not that, okay, dead and done and gone. It's, in a way, being resurrected, just like we've done with the drums, bringing these skins back to life again.
Back to life, yeah. And it's through self-generated ritual, as you know. So it works with, same with my archetypal degree, it works with all different belief systems. So that's really important, that saying it's between you and you. You are the one who gets to find your own belief. There's always the encouragement to have an open heart and mind, because hearts and minds are like parachutes. They only work when they're open. So, but that everyone gets to find their own truth in their own way. And so some of the deaths, Brene Brown says that something has to die for forgiveness. So in the circle at Shasta, people were grieving the death and transformation and rebirth of relationships. It can be of lineage healing. It can be, it can take however many people there are, that many forms and more. But it expresses through you in your own symbolic language. And so mirroring is part of that, is being able to witness and recognize the communication of your own healing, whether it's through a drum or, through listening to the wind in the trees or whatever it is that speaks to you in your experience.
And that circle aspect is so vital and so important too, isn't it? The sharing and willingness to, let me kind of let you know what's going on in here. That's what a marvelous healing process in itself.
Yeah, and I remember from the rite of passage, the mirroring that you do, holding each other. And so often, and this was true in this last experience, even though I didn't do a drum, I did a rite of passage after I led the drum making. So I went to Lassen, and it was about self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, and self-love. And it's like, I've been working on that my whole life back. But I hit some critical mass around that. And so we need all of these lessons. And it was, what struck me is that the power of mirroring in circle. People are so willing to see their weakness and not their greatness. And so the power of mirroring is we see and mirror each other and witness people's greatness. And that shatters so much of that false vision of ourselves in our weakness, or all the ways that we feel like we have not lived up to whatever it is we feel we're supposed to be. And that's what came through for me, was like a deeper iteration of that, almost like self-forgiveness to create self-acceptance, to create deeper self-love.
And with the mirroring part, if you would speak a little bit more
Yeah.
to that, so you really, as you're listening to folks in the circle, it's what we're offering to them of, this is what I just heard, or this is what I feel that you're saying. It's so powerful in itself for that individual.
It's an art form.
Yeah.
So I went to that 3-day mirroring workshop, which was the second part of our training around leadership. And I went hilariously with a bunch of leaders. Everyone had done it like 6 times. And I'm like, rock on, I'm new, you know? But what I loved was they're like mirroring in art, mirroring in drum, mirroring in song, really kind of pushing you. But the basic premise is that essentially we're all blind to ourselves. We have the hardest time seeing ourselves. Again, seeing our greatness. Carl Jung said that 90% of the shadow, what we repress, kind of won't speak to, won't see, is golden. And it's just, the sad part is that's true. Like we can't, anyway, you could talk about that. We condition children to not claim our greatness, and then we carry that burden. So a lot of the mirroring is like, I hear you say, and I see you say. And one of the people from that mirroring process, you could see the whole time that what she was struggling with was that her worth and her value, and that she was treasured. And she just like had a hard time seeing that, and yet alone claiming that. And so the beauty was, it almost makes you go through a breakdown, like a small crisis, death and rebirth, because it's what you're so challenged to claim about yourself. But it was that she was a treasure, literally, that it was her value. And she just struggled to see that. But the whole time the circle knew what was in the room, even though it took her like till the end. And that's the story for all of us. It's almost like midwifing people's self-acceptance of their greatness. And the rites of passage, you come back, and one person on mine who she quit smoking, lifelong smoking on the rites of passage. She quit heroin right before. I mean, she was just like, you are the biggest badass I know. And she saw like the God's eye and all this stuff, and I think everyone sits with this. How am I worthy of that? And it's like, you are worthy.
Because it definitely happened, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we are, I wasn't raised in Christianity proper, but that whole we are worms, we are cast down, we are low. It's the breaking of that in its many forms. That's the beauty of the rebirth, of the, kind of the new chance we have to live in a different skin.
Wow.
Yeah.
So powerful weekend doing this, and then coming away with that it's going to be, it'd be great to kind of follow each person. How has this really changed you? How has it affected you? And it has.
Yeah, and the beauty of why I love going to Shasta over for these is that they are so perfect for sometimes they call it like earth medicine or earth prayer or eco activism, but essentially they really have down this idea of healing yourself to heal the world, and healing the world to heal yourself, and taking the drum and healing with the mountain, and taking the medicine of the mountain and going to the stream. And, so they're like these perfect kind of transient eco-warriors, and they've got that idea down. And so the idea when you create a drum is shock and awe. It's not all about us. What?
Imagine that.
Imagine that, yeah. And that's how we heal. That's really literally what makes us feel better in a nutshell. But so you're tuning into what is the healing that wants to come through me? And that's why it's partly about lineage healing and the ancestors. It's about, does this mountain have something to do with it? What about this stream? You know, what about the animal that's coming through? You know, the vision quest. And so, like mine was white buffalo woman, and then there have been 4 white buffalo calves birthed this year, and white buffalo woman, because when she came, I was like, huh, all right. But her myth is about protecting women from sexual assault, and I have a history of that. And that's really a lot of what I feel called to do, is kind of to speak that out loud, and okay, how do we heal, and how do we work together and create safe containers and community with men and women, and you know, and so she turned out to be a perfect drum for me, and me for her, because that's how I'm a wounded healer, working with that medicine.
Bringing her back to life, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and her lineage is that when one guy recognized her as white buffalo woman, and he's like, yeah, I'm fine standing in my space, and then the other guy attempted to assault her with that sexual assault intent, and he just vaporized in white light. And so it's like, how do we, given statistics which are crazy for women and men, boys and girls, you know, how do we heal in this primary relationship between genders within ourselves to love our bodies? So that's why I didn't make a drum this time, why I have drums in my bathtub at this moment, because I realized that white buffalo woman is my medicine this year, I'm working with that. And I'm kind of birthing more of a self-portrait drum than I have to date out of my bathtub.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So these are projects in the making, if you would, or actually
Yeah.
new life in the making.
New life in the making, yeah. Yeah, and the idea, hopefully I got that kind of across, is that it's like, what medicine do we need in the world? How can we, through our own wounding, help to heal something in the world? And so that's why I love having different drums. I have 8 buck that I've made. I'm like, need another drum? I don't know, but because there are that many different things that need healing, you know, and each drum has its own tone, works with its own chakra and creative energy center, and has its own medicine.
And there's that deep dive of getting to know your skin as you're contemplating. So where are we going with this? You know, you know it's white buffalo, woman actually. But all of that whole process, it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and this one kind of is a bit Jude's drum, and also Lynn gave to me Jude's drum, and the one I'm birthing, you know, I had a kind of a white elk vision, so it's an elk, and it's more of a soul self-portrait than any drum I've done yet, Buck, and I have an idea that it has the Vesica Pisces, so I have an idea of what the sacred geometry of 2 circles coming together.
Oh, yeah.
Might be a male-female healing drum. I have no idea.
But it will come to you, right? And that's the cool thing too. It's almost like take ourselves out of our own brains and kind of feel what's going on here, and accept. Okay, I'm being kind of provided with this vision.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. Yeah, yeah. And at Lassen, I was reading a book on divas and men, and the premise is that we all have an angelic form within us. Nobody else has to believe that. But so I was working with the elements in this way with the drum, and the drum, I think, is just, we know from statistics, it connects our nature to nature. It heals our nature and nature. So I was working with the elements, and I think the sound and the resonance has a way that's beyond anything we can conceive of. So what I was doing was drumming, kind of taking my hands off and just almost like letting it drum, and just sitting with what came through as the medicine of place. But the key is to take yourself out of the picture, and that is medicine itself.
That's not easy, is it? You know, we're so kind of like connected with ego. It's kind of, let me back off here.
Yeah, except when you step out, that's when you feel better. Like, I mean, I know that about myself. When I feel upset or in any way, it's because the small part of me has been like, I'm taking over. And it's like, you can just go take a nap now. You go play. Yeah. Because it makes you feel bad. You know, when you step out, you also realize part of you steps in, and it just feels way better.
Wow, that's kind of a new concept in so many ways for many of us, isn't it? And what you were just describing, actually, all of our discussion today is the drum is, everything is natural about this. The skin, the wood, everything, it seems. And, you know, even with the paints at one time of like using lichen or whatever nature offers to create your own paint. All of it, every bit of these drums it's getting back to nature, bringing nature back to life again.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I've used stains. I try to eco-source stuff. Some women have used blood. You know, you can use whatever. In fact, I think my favorite craft project, this was more with children often, but was finding pigments in nature, crushing them, because crushing stuff is fun, in shells, you know, with stones, adding some egg and making kind of like an egg tempera paint. But that's how, you know, not that long ago, people sourced their pigments, was like, that strata of that mountain is red, let's go get that. You know, so yeah, you can do anything you're called to do, and the biggest thing is kind of to step out of your own way, open up your aperture, and receive from something that you don't identify with self, but is part of the bigger self, maybe, and see what comes through. And then that is the power of all of it, probably, is just that opening to whatever that is, you know, whatever name you want to give that. But that knowledge, and then that guides you in the whole process of a vision quest. And then a drum is something you can come away with as an outcome.
Tangible, yes.
Tangible,
Yeah. Taking away, and the personal growth. I mean, it's in so many different ways: emotional, personal, spiritual. That's just amazing.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things we did with apps, you know, the miracle of our phones, is that I had a bunch of musicians in this last one.
Oh, nice.
So one of them knew on their app, you know, to be like, this is like my white buffalo is a D, which is the heart chakra. You know, so we could get in touch with, you know, what energy center and what is kind of the note, literally, that this resonates with. And then at different altitudes, it's different because they're their own living, breathing beings, and
Amazing. So it should be like these workshops all the time.
Yeah, well, let's do some. Honestly, I love them, and there's all kinds of healing that happens, and then you get to continue. That's what I like partly too, is that, you know, you have this major takeaway from what is an intensive, immersive workshop and rites of passage and vision quest, and then you have this drum journey.
You know, we need to get a hold of so many different folks, but I know you've shared this information about, again, 18 to 25-year-olds doing a substance program and being released, but, you know, not really having, they're homeless. But before the release is to do something like this right here, to further get in touch with yourself, in addition to the treatment that you've just been undergoing, and further just get yourself as solid as possible when you go out. And actually the going out part of making sure there is a place to go to, that there is a home to go to, whatever it might be, but this aspect of it before you're even out the door.
Yeah, you were referencing, there's a couple of statistics, but one is that we dropped 8 nations because, so we're like 23rd in the world, and that's because of our youth crisis. So we have epidemic of depression, and then the unhoused, that we have so many young people that are unhoused. And then looking into it, what you were referencing is that a lot of the unhoused, they have like a depression or suicide either attempt or ideation, and then they're unhoused after that, as if that's going to help.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so yeah, this is preventative medicine, and it's really designed as an archetypal, almost cultural artifact of our past, of like, how do you identify with your, whether you want to call it a soul or yourself or whatever it is, a core part of yourself that you need, who am I to live my life, and underscore my life. And that's what makes us well, you know. And then the vast amount of lost people is a testament to almost like this is a compass. How do you reorient and find yourself to find your way?
And you mentioned it earlier, physician, heal thyself, individual, heal thyself. And you've just talked about many different ways of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And again, not with pharmaceuticals, it's so also natural, or it can
Yeah,
be.
and pharmaceuticals have more of an intervention role. I totally acknowledge that. But the amazing thing is that dancing is like the #1 modality of healing by itself, like more than pharmaceuticals, more than anything. So it's like drumming is like next, and drumming and dancing together is better. I mean, so it's like these ancient practices, now that they're evidence-based and we have statistics, they really are these powerful healing modalities, like the most powerful healing modalities. We just have to wrap our modern heads around that.
There's the challenge,
Yeah, and get our hearts involved somehow too.
But it can be done. You just did it, and you've done it so many different times. So just great medicine in itself.
Yeah, and the more drummers we have that go out there and,
Yeah.
you know, kind of spread the word. Veterans, I've had a number of people in crisis in all different ways, cancer, death, suicide, you know, but essentially we need healing tools, and the beauty is that there are a lot of them and we know them. We just have to remember them in modern times.
Definitely. And as we've talked about at different times, crises equals opportunity.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how we look at it. And you're talking about so many different opportunities of healing oneself. And let's do it.
Yeah, crises is the change and the turning point, a decision point in different languages. And even with the cancer, it was again about taking an active, not a passive role. And all of these modalities are about that and express that. So let's live our lives.
And on that, how about
Yeah.
if we wrap for today? And
Thank you. Yeah.
the guru herself.
Jumping
Yeah,
mouse and then wise frog, yeah.
for sure. Well, thank you very much. And
Oh yeah, thank you back.
thank you for
Thank
tuning in,
everyone.
everybody. And we will see you next show.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Life right here.